I hope you had a great day, and I hope you're having a great afternoon. For those of you who are watching it, it's 5 p.m. Eastern Time, so I hope you've had a great day wherever you are. And I told you I'd be back, so here I am, I'm back with the free Bite-Sized Masterclass series for people who manage people and teams. And actually, I had an interesting conversation with somebody today saying that we don't actually, yeah, it's true, we don't manage people, we manage our relationships with people. Okay, so here's what's gonna happen. And actually, I entitled the whole series Dream Big, Think Like a High Performing Athlete. Because I think as professionals, we need to learn from some of the stuff that high performing athletes already know about the whole cycle of high performance. So, what I wanted to also start with is give you a little background on me and why am I doing this? Well, first of all, I do this because I am super passionate about learning and development. Actually, my background is in learning and development. I worked for over 15 years in corporate learning and development in top legal consulting firms and teams. And then I'm also super passionate about everything that is related to learning. And actually, my favorite quote on learning, I don't know if you have one, but I do, is learning is movement from moment to moment. And I think it's true. And I think, especially in a crisis, we do go through a lot of learning. So, what we are going to do is in this masterclass series is actually we're going to have different content almost every day. And okay, let me take this off because I want you to see the screen. So what's going to happen is I know you're busy people. We're all busy people. We don't have time for long discussions. So we're going to get together every day, not every day, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays for 30 minutes. And I have two identical sessions, one at 12:30 and the other one, which is this one, at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And we talk about all of these things. So we start with preparation, and we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff this week. And then we go to performance and high performance, what that means, and that's going to be next week. And then we end with recovery. And why I say that is that um, high performance means a full cycle. It's not just the performance bit, it's also how we prepare, how well prepared we are, and also how we're able to recover when we're exhausted or when we're overwhelmed or when we've had a bad day. It's also about our ability to pick ourselves up when we didn't have the result that we were hoping for. So when you think about high performance in terms of a full cycle. And for those of you who manage people in teams, think about them as high performing athletes as well. It's not just you, right? We're all in this, and it's so true. And I think we don't think about it enough, is that we're all in this together, especially when we work in a team. And what I often see happening is that leaders or team managers, they separate themselves from the team as if they were a separate entity. And that's not true. They're not a separate entity. You're not a separate entity. You're still part of that team. So we are going to deal with high performance and see what we can do to help ourselves perform at high levels, and also to what we can do to motivate and engage our team so they can perform at high levels. And because I said we're all in this together, absolutely, please feel free to jump in with your questions, with your comments, and let me know if you have any, I don't know, any thoughts, any suggestions, whatever it is, it's a masterclass for you. We're actually celebrating Black Friday, and to me, Black Friday is this. It's an all personal perception. It's a personal perception on Black, on what Black means, and on what Friday means. So that's why at all personal, Black Friday is going to last for 3 weeks. For the 3 weeks during which we can meet and go through all of these things. And if you don't have time to catch these live every day, then don't worry. I will put a link in the description here, and you can subscribe to get access to all of the resources, all of the videos, all of the handouts that I will be sharing. So no worries. Just click the link at the end of this, and then you're all set. Okay, so now we're gonna start on day one. We're gonna start with emotional intelligence and mind setting, and this is really, for me, from my perspective, this is sort of like ground zero. And I often tell people who ask me, okay, so where do I start? What do I need to learn? What do I need to do? I've just been promoted. I'm managing a whole team. I'm managing so many clients. I'm managing so many projects. Where do I start? And my recommendation is, my suggestion all the time is, start with emotional intelligence, because that's where it all starts. And here's why. If you look at this definition, and by the way, again, I think I say this all the time, but it's so true. It's in over 15 years of working with lawyers, what I learned is that we need to define things before we start talking about them. So here we go. We need to define emotional intelligence before we actually start talking about it. And where to best look than in Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence. And his definition is, emotional intelligence refers to the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, and for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. Now, I know that you can also read this, but I think it just gives it a sense of importance when we read this together. And it breaks things so nicely. And by the way, if you haven't read Emotional Intelligence, I absolutely recommend it. It's where it all starts, in recognizing our own feelings and those of others. And here's another quote that I wanted to share with you, which is from, this time, from the director of innovation at Microsoft. And it says that emotional intelligence is the difference that makes the difference. A lack of emotional intelligence is what limits some people in their ability to manage themselves, manage others, or manage situations. And why I wanted to start with this is because when we think about emotional intelligence, we so many times think about, oh yeah, you know what, but I don't really have time for this. I mean, it's all about feelings and emotions, and what does that have to do with anything that's work related? What does that have to do with me being a good manager or being a good leader? Well, look at this. If you don't have it, it basically limits you in your ability to manage yourself, manage others, or manage situations. So I think this actually has a lot to do with the world of work, or with our work life, not just with our personal life. And what happens when we get that emotional intelligence skill muscle and we start building it and growing it, it only gets bigger and bigger, and it benefits us more and more, both at home and at work. So let's get things rolling, and let's start with a question. Now, you can think of a manager or a leader that you think is successful. What qualities do they have? that contribute to that success. It's just you can't imagine somebody that you think is successful in your opinion. What would be some of those qualities? And let's move even further to check, because here is where it's gonna start making sense, or even more sense, I hope. So when we look at this, there's this study by the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development in the UK. And this is a study made before the pandemic, by the way. And it says that nearly as much as 80% of the reasons why careers are derailed can be traced to weaknesses in emotional intelligence. 80%. That's a lot. And even more so, let's look at this, at the three primary causes of career failure. We get poor interpersonal skills, people who are not good team players, and people who have difficulties in handling change. And think about this situation that we're in today, where we're not just dealing with change, but we're also dealing with a crisis. And by the way, the difference between change and crisis is that it's time and it's pace, because in a crisis, you don't have time. It's accelerated. Everything is accelerated. So obviously, I think this doesn't come as a surprise. And these have everything to do with emotional intelligence. So look at what the impact of emotional intelligence is on the career, actually. And we've looked at failure. Now let's look at success as well. Let's look at the three predictors of career success. It's being able to deal with a diverse range of issues, managing emotions, and managing social skills. Everything that we have here has to do with emotional intelligence. So it's not just, oh, you know what, I don't have time for feelings and emotions because I have a lot of work to do. It's actually the other way around. You can be more productive, and you can you can get more things done if you are able to manage the emotions, and to be aware of the triggers and of everything that works for you and doesn't work for you, so that you're also aware of everything works for others around you or doesn't work for them. Okay, so I'm looking just to make sure that we're good with answering your questions and everything. So I don't want to miss your questions, because sometimes I see them super late. So because of that, I'm just checking from time to time. All right. So, and jump in at any time. Okay. So we're good to go. Let's move on, and let's see why it's so crucial that we start with ourselves. And why am I even saying that all the time? Well, because, and here's the emotional intelligence framework where it all starts. And I talk about it, we can talk about emotional intelligence, and I actually talk about it extensively in my emotional intelligence online course, and I also talk about this, but I wanted to share it here because it's important for understanding how it works. So when we talk about the emotional intelligence framework, we talk about awareness and behavior or actions. And then when we talk about awareness, we talk about awareness for ourselves and awareness regarding others. And also when we talk about actions, we talk about actions or behavior that is self-directed, or actions or behavior that we direct towards others. So the reason why I'm saying that it all starts with ourselves is that it does. It just does. It starts with self-awareness. And here's how it works. So the minute I start to notice What makes me happy? What makes me sad? What works for me? What doesn't work for me? What are my triggers for frustration, for anger, for joy, for stress, for anxiety? When I start understanding what they are and what emotions they trigger, then and only then can I start to really do something about it. If I'm not even aware of my actions and reactions in different kinds of circumstances, and especially in those situations that I find more difficult to be in, then I will not be able to manage my emotions and my actions properly because I'm not going to know that they're there. I'm not going to even be aware of their presence, of their existence. So, this is why I say it all starts with self awareness, because it starts with noticing what works and what doesn't. And then, once I've noticed that, then I can move on to action, because and do the kind of self-management that we're talking about. We also love to use this word, right? Self-management. Well, yes, because once I notice what works for me, what doesn't work for me, I will also understand what and how I can change it. So let's say I'm in a situation, in a conflict situation. I I know or I notice that I freeze in or even in potential conflict situations, not even conflict situations, right? So if I notice that in those situations I freeze, then what I want to do is understand, does that help me? Does that not help me? And if it doesn't help me, do I want to change it? And if I want to change it, how am I going to change it? And then I know that, okay, next time that I'm in a potentially conflictual situation, I want to have a different kind of behavior. So, what is it that I'm going to do? One, two, three, practically, to do that, to change my behavior, because if I change my behavior, I will also be able to change my result. And that we're going to see in 5 minutes from now. So, but that is only possible because I know what happens to me in a potentially conflictual situation. And then I know what to do about it. And I'm not going to let the situation manage me, but I will be able to manage my reaction in that particular situation. And then I am able to move on from the self awareness and the self actions on to others. So, with this, with the self awareness comes social awareness. And I say that all the time. How can we be aware of what other people go through and understand, or even pretend to start to understand what they're going through, and how circumstances affect them, how they are different from us, and how that's good, how they work differently, think differently, feel differently, and how we can actually use that for everyone's benefit. How am I going to do that if I don't understand how I work, how I function, how I am at my best, or how I am when I need help? So, with self awareness, we can move on to social awareness and also develop empathy. And by the way, we talk a lot about empathy, and this comes with social awareness, because I notice when you're upset, or I notice uh, the things that make you happy, the things that worry you, the things that stress you, and then we can work with that. And then I can start to manage my relationships better once I developed my social awareness and my capacity for self management, right? Because they come together. The minute that I'm noticing what works for me, what doesn't work for me, I'm noticing what works for you or doesn't. And then because I'm able to manage my own emotions, actions, and I can see the results of these, then I'm also able to manage my relationships with people around me as well. And I can start to think about how we can develop our work relationships. If I manage a team, I will understand how I can help them progress, how I can help them develop in their career, and so on. So there's a lot that emotional intelligence helps with, and it all starts with self-awareness. Um, and if that wasn't enough, I'm just going to put these on because there is such a strong connection between leadership and emotional intelligence. And again, if you think about my initial question about leaders or managers that you consider are successful and what are some of their characteristics, well, I think a lot of them will be here. So these are people who can manage themselves well, right? So what that gives you is the self-awareness, and it helps you manage your emotions and pace them and take control over your reactions in particularly in the difficult situations for you. And we also talk about managing your team, right? That's why we're here. We're talking about people who manage people in teams. Well, this is what emotional intelligence has to do with leadership, especially in developing empathy and in a leader's role to develop others and to also be able to manage conflict and change. Especially now, that is so crucial to be able to do. Managing conflict also starts from even preventing conflict. So making a difficult situation, addressing a difficult situation before it actually turns into conflict. So that is what emotional intelligence helps you as a leader, because you will be able to recognize the signs of a potential conflict before it's even there. And instead of you choosing to ignore it or silver line it, you will be able to address it the right way up front and just help it diminish before it turns into a conflict. So and this is related to also us being able to manage the work and our achievement and solution oriented approach. Because the minute that I'm actually noticing situations that could turn bad and I'm able to do something about that, I will be able to do that because I'm able to adapt quickly to that situation and I'm able to see possible solutions. Or even if I don't see the possible solutions, at least ask for them and get that solution oriented mode on, rather than having the fight or flight or freeze response. And also, what that does is it helps us manage collaboratively, because that's how we will start influencing and inspiring others. Obviously, because we will notice and we will understand how they work and how we work and how we can work best together. So this is, I know it's easy to say, and I know it's not as easy to do, but it all starts really with ourselves, with understanding and noticing what works and what doesn't work for us. And here's an exercise that you can do. Um, Consider these circumstances and just think about your thoughts. I'm going to make this big so that you can see it. What are your thoughts in these circumstances? Like cutting your finger. What do you do? What's your reaction? Receiving a compliment, making a mistake at work, or dealing with an angry client or coworker or teammate. What do you do? What is your response to this? So just think about these and then see how you respond to these situations, and if it helps you or if it doesn't help you. And if it doesn't, would you like to change something or not? And if you would like, if you do want to change something, then what do you want to change? And how are you going to change it the next time that you're in a similar situation? A little bit of food for thought. And by the way, this is a fun exercise to do with your team as well. Why not? I think it's pretty safe. And by the way, I will be sharing resources, and I do have a handout that I want to share with you that's related to both emotional intelligence and mindsetting. So at the end of this live stream, in the video description, I will just post a link to where you can get your resources so you don't miss them. Okay, so moving on to mindsetting and how that is related to managing emotions. And I call it mindsetting because I like to think that mindset, it's to me, it's a verb. To mindset or not to mindset, there is no question about it because we do mindset all the time. I mean, we set our mind one way or another all the time, whether we even realize it or not, whether we like it or not, we do it. And here's a quote that I wanted to start with because I think it's important because it connects to results. I don't want to talk about mindset generally and get that universal approach. Yes, it is all about mindset, and we really are the result of what we have thought. And it's really very much linked and related to practical stuff that we do. And here's how it goes. So that's why I wanted to share this with you, because thoughts are related to results. And unless we understand that, um, we're not going to be able to change our results. And you know the definition of insanity. The definition of insanity, Einstein said it is doing the same thing over and over again, and expecting to get a different result. So there you go. Okay, but I'm not going to start with Einstein. I'm going to start with Rudy Shelly, and I'm going to actually introduce Rudy Shelly to you. He is one of the greatest acting professors. He worked with a lot of Hollywood actors and a lot of great theater actors in the UK. And whenever he was working with his students to prepare for an emotional scene, he was telling them, when you are in an emotional scene, don't go for the emotion. Go for the thought that triggers the emotion that will then give you the behavior. And that will feed right back into your thoughts. And I thought, hey, wow. Well, basically, when I read this, I was just, oh, okay, wow. That explains it. And I'm going to make it bigger so you can actually see it. And we're going to move even further to see how this works in practice. So the theory is we think about something, and that makes us feel one way or another. And because we feel one way or another, we behave one way or the other. We do something or we don't do something depending on how we feel. And because of that behavior, we're going to get a result. Or if I don't do anything, then obviously I'm not going to get any result. And that result is going to feed right back into our thoughts. So let's work with some examples here, because okay, fine. We talk about that. Yeah, okay. How does that work for me? Well, we'll take two examples. So the first example is one where we have a negative thought. And it's something like, when I present, I'm exposed to judgment and ridicule. Well, wow. What a great thought to have. How does that make you feel? Well, I think it might make you feel afraid. Let's go with that for the sake of this exercise, right? So when I have that thought, I already imagine people judging me, and I already imagine that it's going to be completely ridiculous to me. So I'm going to be afraid. And because I'm afraid, I'm going to behave as such. And I get into that panic mode. And what does panic mode do is our throat gets tight, my heart beats faster. I don't even think clearly. I don't have a clear message to send out, probably because also I didn't prepare too much because I was so afraid and I didn't want to go there in the first place. And I feel that I'm losing control of the situation. And what that does is it gives me the result of it looks like they attack my position. They're asking so many questions. They don't think that I'm right. They think that my ideas don't matter. And what we think about when our ideas don't matter is that, oh my God, I don't matter. I don't matter as a person. We as people don't matter when our ideas don't matter. And then what happens with this result that I didn't want to get, but which I actually helped myself get with everything that I didn't do to get a different result? Well, the result will feed right back into me thinking, well, you see, every time that I present, this happens. And this is basically confirmation bias. We're confirming to ourselves over and over again what we already thought was going to happen. But what we thought was going to happen, we actually made it happen because it made us feel a certain way that made us act a certain way. So now let's change the thought to a more positive one. And let's switch it a little bit and say, when I present, I give people valuable information that they will appreciate. Now that it's almost the same thought, but it's not. Because now I think there's actually value in that conversation. And the way that that makes me feel, for instance, is more enthusiastic or more excited about the experience. And because I am more excited, yes, maybe my heart will still beat faster because I'm going to be excited about it. But I'm also going to express my opinion clearly. And because I will want to make it a valuable conversation for everybody, right? I will prepare properly and I will do it with a different kind of intention, with the intention of having value, not with the intention of running the field because I don't want to be there. So, because I'm taking this action and because of a different kind of behavior, the result will be different. And yes, people might be asking me questions, more questions at the end because they might be interested in the topic. And even if I don't have all the answers, I will be happily probably researching further. But to me, what that means is that you see, I matter. I will feel that I matter because we all had a valuable conversation, a valuable experience that we shared. And with that, of course, that result is going to feed right back into my train of thoughts. And you see, so this is what happens when you present, you give people valuable information that they do appreciate. So it's the reason I say it's all personal, nothing is just business, or one of the reasons is, well, that it is, but because we think about something, right? And when we think, we also have a sort of a visual idea of how that's gonna look. And the most important thing is that that thought makes us feel a certain way. And because I feel a certain way, then I will take action accordingly. And depending on the action, which is behavior, that's going to give me the result. And the result is going to feed right back into the thought. Now, there is this loop that we can go through over and over again. And perpetuate that negative thought over and over again because we keep getting a negative result, a bad result all the time. But we can actually break this by just changing the thought. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that, I mean, I know it's not as simple as it sounds, and at the same time, it is. We all we need to do is start with self-awareness, as I was saying, and then understand, why am I feeling this way in this moment right now? What are the thoughts that fuel that feeling, and what can I do to change them? That is awesome. And actually, tomorrow we'll be talking about ways in which you can get a different feeling so that you can take a different kind of action when you can't change the thought. So we'll talk about poses and body language and mindset, and how our body language influences mindset. So how our body language influences how we set our mind and how what we think, so that we get a different feeling. So come back tomorrow for that. But okay, so what I will do is, as I said, I will definitely share the link where you can get your emotion journal handout, which is a great exercise for you to start with self-awareness. That's going to help you a lot with understanding your triggers in especially in difficult situations. And then you also have the mindset shift bit in the handout, where you can work on, what is another thought that I can think about this situation that actually helps me get a different kind of behavior that gives me a different result. So this is, again, it's very practical. It also depends on how often you do it, but definitely useful. And I'm going to share some more useful resources and books that I recommend on this topic. And if you want more of these, we discuss a lot of what we are going to talk about in this whole masterclass series. So if you want to know more about the Lead for Legacy League, drop me a message and I'm happy to talk to you about it. It's a mixed global online program for online training, group coaching, and brainstorming and networking. It's a management and leadership development program. So if you want to talk about it, I'm absolutely happy to discuss it with you. So tomorrow we are talking about power poses, body language, and how they influence our mindset, or how they influence what we think about, and how they influence our results. So that said, thank you for joining me. And ask your questions at any point that you're seeing this. If you're watching the replay, catching it on whatever platform, ask your questions, make your comments. I'm happy to answer them at any point, and see you again tomorrow. Have a great evening.